Hi, friends, and welcome to this session on it's paying for college, broadly speaking, but we're talking about the new FAFSA, which is often pronounced FAFSA, which I imagine annoys some folks, but we're kind of used to it around here. But we're talking about college affordability with my amazing guest, Amanda Miller. Hi, Amanda.
Hello.
And I want to just, by way of introducing Amanda, I want to say that I kind of messed this up earlier this morning, so I want to be more succinct. And I want to say, Amanda, you are one of my favorite collaborators. I love how practical, I love how efficient what it is, the resources you share, and I love that you say I'm going to leave time for Q&A, and you leave time for Q&A because that's something that I'm not always great about. So to that end, if you've got questions, throw them into the chat, and our lovely moderator, Diana, will throw them into our top secret Google Doc that we've got going on behind the scenes. And also, we've got a poll coming up in a few seconds. Diana, we can throw it up. Let us know if you are a student, parent, counselor, or somebody else. You can let us know who you are in the chat. And that will help Amanda know. I mean, we're talking to sort of a little bit of everybody today. We'll get into the specifics in just a second. Some quick PSAs, and then we're going to get right into the content within probably about 90 seconds. But the first thing to tell you about is we've got a little form that we're going to be giving out a free book at the end of the session. And so if you would be so kind as to spend 2 minutes, and this might mean a little bit of multitasking, forgive me, but we'd love to have you all fill out the form just to get to know you a little bit better. And at the end of the session, we'll give away a copy of College Admission Essentials, which is a book that will help you through the college application process, or your students if you're a counselor. We've also got some cool courses coming up soon. Amanda's leading an awesome course on paying for college that we'll tell you about a little bit later. And we've got CEG Live. CEG Live is our summer boot camps that are happening. And next week, we're focusing on the UCs. So if you're a counselor, you've got students who are focusing on the UCs, you think, oh, I'd love to send them to Ethan's house, as it were, or at least my office here virtually, to not literally my house, please, to have them work on the University of California personal insight questions. We'd love to have them. That's next week, and we'll tell you more about the rest soon. All right, we're ending the poll. Amanda, we've got 20% students, 56% parents, and 23% counselors.
That's a good mix.
Yeah, it is a nice mix.
Yeah. So to the students who are here, I'll say welcome. Well done taking charge of your process. I'm so glad you're here. To the parents, I will say take a deep breath. We got this. I got you. And to my counselor colleagues, I know you're looking forward to advising everyone, especially with all the seismic changes around FAFSA going on. So I'm really looking forward to everyone's questions.
Well, let's jump right in. I'm going to hand you the mic. You take stage and let's do this.
All right, here we go. Sharing my screen. Got to do the play thing. Here it goes. Oh, that's at the top. Give me one moment. The bar always goes to the top. There we go.
And I'll throw the about Amanda into the chat so that folks know.
Yes, thank you. I never take time to introduce myself. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda, the counselor lady, and I love college affordability. I get excited about it, and I know it's not counselors' maybe favorite thing, and maybe not parents, but it's definitely mine. So let's jump in with 3, 2, 1 college affordability. We're going to start with an impressively brief overview of how financial aid works, and impressively because I really am going to condense what would normally be an hour-and-a-half financial aid night intro into 2 slides as quick as I can. But I'm a firm believer in scaffolding. So if you're here having never heard of a FAFSA before, or having no idea how financial aid works, I'm going to give you 2 slides to kind of play catch up before we dive into the deep stuff. Then we're going to talk about 3 types of scholarships. And then the 3 types, because basically everything falls into them, and then pros and cons of each of those types and when and where to find them. And then we're going to dive in talking about the FAFSA and maybe your family. There's several different families that are impacted by the changes in FAFSA. We're going to highlight a couple of them. And then we'll also talk about the effects of the FAFSA delay, because a lot of people have heard. If you haven't, that's fine. We're going to go over it, that the FAFSA is being delayed this year. And then we'll save time for Q&A. Hopefully 15 minutes. I'll try to aim for more, but I also don't want to talk too fast. So let's get to it. So here's how financial aid works very briefly. So here's our financial aid umbrella. When you talk to a college financial aid officer and they talk about financial aid, here's everything they mean. They mean gift aid, which is one side of it, and then self-help aid. So gift aid is someone else pays. You do not pay it back. It is yours. It is deducted from your bill fantastic. Self-help aid is you pay in some form or another. So both of these sides are all financial aid. Okay, on the self-help side, student parent loans, and then also work study. We're not going to talk about those today, but that's that side. We're going to talk about the more exciting side, the gift aid. So there's scholarships and grants, and a lot of people will use these interchangeably. For the purpose of our discussion, they are different. So scholarships are merit-based aid, money you get for being awesome, an awesome singer, tennis player, great grades, whatever, writing an excellent essay. Grants are money that are need-based aid, money that you get because you need it to pay for college. So they're different groups of aid, and that's how we're going to treat them. Okay. The next thing we're going to talk about is some alphabet soup acronyms. Stick with me. I'm going to put what they stand for on the next slide, but we're going to talk about the basic formula of financial aid. So COA, which is cost of attendance, sticker price of the school, minus other financial aid, minus SAI, student aid index, equals need. Okay, so let's transplant this over to the next slide. So what does this mean? So let's use an example. Let's say school X costs $40,000 sticker price, all in. So that's tuition, fees, room, board, books, supplies, transportation, and then miscellaneous personal expenses like toilet paper and movie tickets. All of this counts, okay? They have to include all of these in the cost of college. Then they subtract your other financial assistance, things like scholarships and loans. And then they look at how much, according to the FAFSA, or if it's a CSS profile school, which we're not going to get into today, how much your family should be able to afford according to their calculations. And then they look at how much you're still short. So this is the amount you still need. And they can give you, as an institution, they could give you up to that amount. Now, are they definitely going to do that? Most of the time, no. Most of the time, we're going to do something what's called gapping, where they meet 80% of that 7,500 that's left over, or 60%. Some schools will meet 100%. What I found is there's a little bit, not a direct, but a pretty close correlation between how hard a school is to get into and how much need they meet. But there are lists online of schools that meet 100% of need. Okay, so this is what's going on in a financial aid process. So we're going to focus in on two specific parts of this. One is, where did those scholarship dollars come from? Like, how did those get there? Because that's important. That's free gift aid that I don't have to pay back. And how are they figuring out that I have to pay $15,000? What things might impact that number? What might make that number maybe go down so that colleges can give me more aid? That's where we're going to focus our discussion today. Okay. So let's dive in with the 3 scholarship types. I'm sorry, I say dive in a lot because it's summer. My kids have been in the pool all week. I'm going to try to change it up. All right. So let's start with our types and their pros and cons. First type, institutional aid. This is the college's money that they give away. So pros, far and away, this is where most of the money is. Like, if I had to venture my own guess, I'd say 92%, give or take 5%. Like, that's how much of all scholarship dollars are coming from this type. It's renewable. Like, if you get it freshman year, most of the time, as long as you maintain satisfactory academic progress, SAP, keep your grades up, then you get it again the next year. So getting $10,000 for freshman year really is like $40,000. That's pretty great. They can be easy to find. If the school is transparent and puts them on their website, that's great. There's a organization that has some free resources, but it's kind of a paid service for college financial aid. They're pretty great. I've chatted with them. They're called College Aid Pro. They have this cool free resource about transparency and how transparent some institutions are and what their grade is. So some are more transparent than others. Anyways, so some of these scholarships are automatically awarded. Students will apply for college and then get a scholarship, having never applied separately for a scholarship. So that's pretty fantastic. And then limited competition. Now, it's not to say that these aren't competitive. In fact, being competitive is one of the cons. But what I mean by limited competition is this is money that can only be used at that institution. So, the University of Central Arkansas, a scholarship there from them can't be used at University of North Carolina. So in that sense, it's only students who are applying to that college. So that's helpful. Cons. Availability varies. Some schools just don't really have that many scholarships. Some give scholarships to almost everybody. It just depends on the institutional priorities. Are they more interested in need-based aid and helping folks who can't afford it and everybody else is willing to pay that price tag? Or are they discounting and saying, we want to lure people in kind of with these scholarships to like encourage them to come here? What would be the price point to like tip the scales so they would consider us? There can be GPA and score cutoff. So I want to highlight this in test optional, admissions time, where we are now, where so many colleges are test optional. They are test optional for admissions, but sometimes they're not, their scholarships may still be based on a score cutoff, like a certain test score. So just something to look at. A good example would be like looking at University of Wyoming. They have this really handy chart that's just a grid of what's your GPA, what's your test score, boom, that's what you get. So that's pretty great. Competitive, they may say on their website they have full ride scholarships, but how many do they really have? Is it like 10,000 students in the freshman class and they give out 5? Or is it 1,000 people in the freshman class and they're giving out 200? That's where you have to do a little bit of research because they may not list it on the website, but you can absolutely call up the folks in the financial aid office. That's what they're there for. It is a separate office than the admissions office. And students, my 25 students who chimed in, said they're students, they want to hear from you. Parents, they typically don't want to hear from us unless we have like a question about a form for, opportunities. They really do want to hear from the students. Okay. Next type, local. This is your community money. So pros, these are typically pretty easy applications, like front and back of a piece of paper. If you have a resume, just say see attached resume and attach it. You can get through these things pretty quickly. They're easy to find. Your counselors tend to make them pretty easy to find. And we'll talk about where to find them in a second. And there's very limited competition. Sometimes it's only the seniors in your high school who can apply, or in your county, or in a couple of counties. So, it's pretty great. One of the reasons that, while they're easy to find, a lot of students end up not doing these is if they require an essay or something like that. By the second half of senior year, my students have succumbed to senioritis and none of them want to write the essays anymore. So on scholarship night, the same kid gets up 5 times anyways, because they're the one who wrote it. Cons, these are usually not a ton of money. So they're usually, I'd say the median is $1,000. $15,000 is about the biggest one I've seen. And they're typically not renewable. It's like you're going off to college for AU, but sophomore year of college, you've got to figure something to make that gap. And then the timing. A lot of times you don't find out if you've won a local scholarship until after you've committed to the college. So like senior award night, where they announce the scholarships, is the end of May, but you've committed to a college by May 1st. So think of local scholarships as kind of the cherry on top of scholarships. It's, hey, I was going to take out a loan. I got a few scholarships from, the local bank or the Rotary Club, and now I don't have to take out as much of a loan. And then private. Okay. If any of you have ever typed scholarships into Google and just felt the volume of information just come over you, this is what we're talking about here. These are random scholarships. This is the stuck at prom, make a prom dress out of duct tape, win $10,000 scholarships, the Coca-Cola scholarship, the Dr. Pepper tuition giveaway, all of those. They are various and abundant. Anyone with money and a dream can make a scholarship. So this is where it gets a little challenging, but don't worry, I have some tips here in a minute on how to handle these. They are time consuming to find. Most of them don't apply to you. So for every 100 you look at, maybe only 2 to 5 of them maybe you're eligible for, and they're potentially very competitive. If all the ones that say, enter your email address here and win $10,000, like the likelihood of you actually getting is probably very slim. So if you found it online and you found it pretty easily, chances are other people did too. So let's talk about when to tackle these and where to look, and a couple pro tips. So institutional. Now, the moment you decide you're interested in a college, through September of senior year, you should know. Could you look beyond that? You could, but you're probably worried about applications and, dare say, essays at that point. So researching now is very helpful, and apply through February. So some colleges, your scholarship application is due before you even know if you've been admitted. I'll pick on App State, which is in kind of my backyard. Their early action deadline for admission is November 1st. Their scholarship application is November 15th. So you'd have to make that deadline. And then some colleges, you don't apply for scholarships until after you've been admitted. And then in the scholarship portal that they give you as part of your onboarding as a student, through your student portal and everything, there's a scholarship page where you can go in and apply. And some schools will invite you for a scholarship weekend, like, oh, we love you, we saw your admissions application, and we want to invite you to a scholarship weekend. So there's lots of ways that they do this, but basically through February is when most of this is tied up. And here's where we run into some trouble is folks don't get the award letter telling them how much they're getting, sometimes until as late as March or April. So you get the bill in March, but all the scholarships were back in October or November. And so that's where we kind of run into families that are just a few months too late. So now you're not going to be late. It's going to be great. Take this, spread it to everyone. Where to look? College's website. Some are better than others. I will give this general tip. If you go to a college's website, first of all, don't go to the website and then look for scholarships within it. I would just use Google, like the name of the college with scholarships, and that will take you to the site probably a little quicker. But when you're looking there, if like the 4th or 5th bullet point is how to fill out the FAFSA and how to find scholarships on scholarships.com or something like that, that's a pretty good indication that they probably aren't offering a lot. If they list a couple scholarships and that's it. A couple things you can do is add some keywords after scholarship, like freshman scholarships. You're not looking at the graduate department or special major scholarships. You might look for an honors college. Some of them have money attached to them. And if you're looking at a college that's public but not in your state, look for non-resident scholarship. That'll get you to the page you need pretty quickly. Okay, local, when you should tackle these. Senior year, in my neck of the woods where I am, most of these are January through about Easter, like spring break time. That's the window. Some school districts and areas, they start as early as the fall where these community local scholarships are available, but most of the time they're not available to underclassmen, and most of the time they're not available to folks who are currently in college. They could be, but the vast majority of them are focused on seniors and that senior spring. And then where to find them? Your high school counselor's office. In the olden days, there was a bulletin board with like pockets. Now you have Naviance and Score. And then, hi, Erica, I see your hand up. If you have a question, I will answer it momentarily. Let's see, you can reach out to local businesses, civic organizations, the Rotary Club, Kiwanis Club. I actually had some really enterprising juniors a couple of years ago during the pandemic when they, couldn't go out and do other things. They're like, what if I just contacted all these local businesses or all these local organizations and asked them if they offer scholarships? And a lot of them said, we don't, we totally should. And then senior year, that student reached out and found they had a scholarship and applied for it. And the organizations were like, oh, this is the kid who asked about it. That's so enterprising. We love that. And then every state typically has a college information website. In North Carolina, it's College Foundation North Carolina, CFNC. They usually have a searchable database for scholarships that you can find. Okay, now for the private scholarships, when to tackle these. Now until you graduate college, there's not really a window. There are ones for 8th graders. There are ones for graduate students. Prime season is senior year. But you can apply for these scholarships all through school. It's just, like I said, it's time consuming. Treat it like a part-time job. Apply for 5 times as much as you hope to get. It's just a lot. Where to look? I often get asked if I have a favorite scholarship resource. I wish I did. I have all these places that I will look and go to and cycle between. And there are ones that certainly some students will like more than others. I will say you don't have to sign up for all of these and get bombarded by their emails. Usually if you're searching for something, a specific scholarship or a type of scholarship, and they say, here's the name of it, but sign in to learn more, you can just take the name of it and put it in Google and find it a different way. But pro tips. So pro tip number 1. How many of you, this is for my counselors and parents if you've had another student who's gone off to college, how many of you have told a student, go apply for scholarships, and they have come back a week or 2 later smiling, beaming that they have completed 3 scholarship applications? It typically doesn't happen. What I have found does work is when parents and students work together. So what you can do is you can make a characteristic list. Like I said, I don't have a favorite resource, but I have a favorite approach. Make a student's characteristic list. List all the nouns that describe that student. So STEM major, female, allergic to fish, worked at Chick-fil-A, anything, just like, okay, so allergic to fish is not a noun, but all the things that could possibly pertain to them. And then go through these websites looking for that type, and that helps you make progress. Like today, we're looking for soccer player scholarships. Tomorrow, we're looking for business major scholarships. And that helps you keep focus. And if you come across something else that applies while you do it, great. I will also say you need to make a spreadsheet, because once you find a scholarship, if you don't put the link where you found it, you will never find it again. It's some magic of the internet. It just disappears again. So name, deadline, and link to where you found it is very, very helpful. So what I found works system-wise is making an assembly line. So rather than telling the student, hey, go fill out the scholarships or go do scholarships, the parent will go and find the scholarship and then pass it off to the student and say, okay, here are the ones I have found that apply to you. I've searched through 1,000 scholarships. I have found these 8. Please go do these 8. And that tends to work out pretty well for families. Okay, I will take questions about scholarships in a minute, but I'm so excited to go and talk about the impact of the new and arguably improved FAFSA. I spent the last hour just for fun looking through the federal aid comments of everybody commenting on the FAFSA draft that came out last month, and or a couple months ago, and there's a lot of chatter around whether or not this is actually an improvement. Some things are. All right, so a little bit of background. Congress in 2020 told us that FAFSA was going to be very, very different. And as part of the FAFSA simplification, it was a long-held dream of Senator Lamar Alexander's of my home state of Tennessee to have the FAFSA fit on a postcard. It does not fit on a postcard, but there are many fewer questions. So instead of 108 questions, there are 49. And if you're wondering why 49 is in quotes, is because when I give math tests, in my other life, I was a math teacher, and I had a question with question 1, ABC, my students would, decry, this is not 1 question, this is 3. So that's why I put that, because some are multi-part. Anyways, it is more aligned to the tax returns. They're trying to make this simple for families. So for anyone who's familiar with how it has gone up to this point with the IRS data retrieval tool, that will be no more. What they're doing instead is this direct data exchange, DDX, for federal tax information. And what it is a consent to just have the IRS and have FAFSA just talk to each other and just knock it out. You don't have to go to a separate website, fill stuff in, give consent, and then send it over. It's just going to do a direct pull all your stuff. So far as I know, you won't be able to edit or see the information that's pulled in, just like it is with the data retrieval tool, but that should make it easier. There's also more emphasis on income instead of assets. Now, this is true for most families, but they really did a lot to focus on a family's income by, say, for example, raising the income protection allowance, like how much of your money, how much of your income is not considered usable for paying for college. Okay, so a perfect example of fewer questions, tax return alignment, and emphasis on income. Okay, I'm about to make all this really complicated stuff, hopefully super simple, are these automatic Pell guidelines. So on old FAFSA, you would have to fill out the whole FAFSA and then cross your fingers while it processed, and then it would pop up with your EFC, which is how much you could reasonably afford to pay for college, basically. And now you don't have to fill out the full form to know if you're going to get a Pell Grant. You can know if you're going to get a Pell Grant if you have access to your 2022 tax return. So let's take a look. So this is not live anywhere. I created this because all this talk about percentage of federal poverty guidelines, it was just easier to make it. So there's an asterisk up there. If you're calling in for Alaska or Hawaii, your numbers are different because all these numbers are tied to federal poverty guidelines, and those are different. But for the contiguous 48, so find your number in your household, determine if your parent is a single parent or a non-single parent, and then the first 2 columns talk about the maximum Pell. So if your income, I'm going to pick one for example, if you're a family of 4 and your income your adjusted gross income on line 11 of your 1040 is this number or lower, congratulations, you get an automatic zero EFC, you get an automatic full Pell Grant, which this past year was like 7,400. It's going to hopefully go up like it does every year, but congratulations, you know what you're getting. So for counselors dealing or handling and talking with families and saying, oh, we're not going to file it because we don't know if we're going to get anything. Well, first of all, everybody gets loans. And second of all, the information is still helpful for state programs and college programs, but at least for the Pell, this spells it out whether or not you're going to get it. Now, the minimum over here, so let's say that same family for, well, we're just above that, we have 55. Well, guess what? You're still under the minimum Pell cap. So you're going to get a Pell Grant, and the minimum is just 10% of whatever the maximum is. So the minimum for that year would have been like $750. So you're below this, but above this, you're still going to get a Pell Grant. So this gives families like end caps for Pell eligibility. Now, again, other aid is to be considered with the student aid index for college grant money and other things, but for the Pell, this makes it really simple. Okay, let's talk about a couple of impacted family types. So I said we were going to talk about how they calculated that 15,000 number on that second slide of like how much you're able to pay. Well, there's a couple of adjustments for a few kinds of families that are going to make that number go up or down. And they're pretty big. So divorced parents. So divorced parents who did not live together. Who is the FAFSA parent? Which parent is the one who is the custodial parent, the parent for the student on the FAFSA? The rule up till this point has been whichever parent the student lives with more than 50%. Going forward, the rule will be whichever parent financially supported the student more than 50%. So to make a clear example of this, I have a student who has a mom who works in the school lunchroom and a dad who is a dentist. They are separated, divorced, live apart. He lives with mom. So mom's income and information would go on the FAFSA, and dad's would not exist. Going forward, if dad is providing more of the support for that student, then dad's information would go on. Okay, another thing that's going to be different for divorced, separated parents is child support. Up until this point, it was considered untaxed income. Now it is going to be considered an asset instead. So that it's just going to change. When they reduced the number of questions, they gutted the untaxed income section, and a bunch of the workman's comp question, the veterans education benefits, they just gutted that whole section. So they're including that in assets instead. Families with small businesses and farms. This has been one of the more talked about ones that I've seen in the last couple months. So up until this point, if your business or farm had fewer than 100 employees, 100 and fewer, then the net worth, that was not counted. Now it will be counted. There's a lot of discussion around what do you count. For example, if you reside on your farm and the house you live in and the land that's not used for farming, that should not be counted. That's a residence. That doesn't count as an asset on FAFSA, but the farm does. And they're still trying to seek clarification on how that's all going to work out, but that's the rule now. So that's changed. Now, I did dig deeper into this because there were a lot of questions and how this is going to impact the SAI or how much colleges think you can afford to pay, because clearly farm assets are not, you can't just liquidate them. So I took a look. NASFA, the lovely people who are financial aid administrators for colleges across the country, they're the financial aid folks you talk to on the phone for 9 out of 10 college students. They're great. They did a few case studies. They basically ran simulations using the old formula, EFC formula, and the new SAI formula. And here's what they figured out. If the net worth of your farm or business was was greater than $200,000, SAIs, how much the colleges thought you could pay, was negatively impacted. They increased the student aid index for people with incomes of $60,000 or $150,000. Those were the two income ranges they decided to run the simulation for. So if your net worth was less than that, it was about the same. If it was right at 200, it was a little bit more, but about the same. If it was less than that, you actually benefited from the new SAI formula, like how they calculate things now. It actually turned out better. So there's still more to know on this, but I just wanted to give you an indication of like, that's something I know. That's something that's been published and tried out. Okay, and I said a couple here in the South, a couple can be more than two. So I like to underpromise, overdeliver. So here's one more, just for fun. Multiple in college. So if you currently have a older sibling for my students or a student for my parents in college, the way it has worked previously is if you have twins or multiple in college at the same time, what they have done is they take your family's, the chunk of money that FAFSA believes you can use to pay for college, and they split it between the students you have in college. So if you fill out the FAFSA and it says you can afford $20,000 for college, great. And you have two in college, great. Well, you don't magically grow more because you have more students in school. So they split that between them, 10 and 10. Not so anymore. So the sibling discount is not going to happen going forward. Now, so what happens is, so for families that currently have multiple kids in college, you're going to see a jump in what FAFSA says you can pay, and this is why. And don't panic. There's a thing called professional judgment, basically reaching out to the financial aid offices at the colleges that your students are at and saying, here's why it jumped. We understand. What can we do to work with this? And just seeking to talk to them college by college. Counselors have been asking the colleges. Colleges have said we're figuring it out, but that's what we know so far. There's a lot of unknown because change takes time. And so as a result of all these changes, instead of the FAFSA opening October 1st this year, it's opening in December. December what? We do not know yet, but it's opening in December. And it would be really nice to know the day. And I know they're working to tell us the day, but December 1st, counselors, is different than December 31st, is it not, in terms of access to students? So ripple effect is we're gonna see a delay in when students get aid packages for early decision and early action applicants. They'll just get their award letters later. For students who are applying early decision to schools that only use the CSS profile, that's the big long form, that's not the FAFSA. If they're using that, it's possible colleges, I suppose, could to give a provisional award letter, like here's what we think you're going to get, but until you fill out your FAFSA and get all your, Pell and state aid and other things, we won't know for sure, but here's what we think. And then early action applicants, they might just wait till later. And then what we also see is a pushback of priority filing deadlines for colleges and for states. So states, if you look at the PDF that was released of the 2024-2025 first draft of the FAFSA, it lists all of the deadlines for each state and when you should do it. A lot of them are just XX, like they just don't have a deadline set because they don't know when the FAFSA is going to come out. So I would say everyone can take a collective calming deep breath because everyone knows this is a year of grace for FAFSA and everyone knows that we're all dealing with the changes. And so we'll get through it. Okay, how do I do for time? Yes, I wanted to leave plenty of time for Q&A. So before we start Q&A though, I have a question for you. Are you all, put in the chat, are you feeling more empowered or overwhelmed? That's what I would like to know. What are you seeing, Ethan?
I'm seeing empowered, overwhelmed, confused, empowered, a bit of both, unsure.
Yeah, I usually get a mix of both. I want you to leave more empowered, which is why I leave time for Q&A. So what I want to know is what questions can I answer so you leave more empowered than overwhelmed? It's a lot. I'll admit, I do this and I love it and I'm a little overwhelmed. I have been making pages and pages of notes of all the changes and I'm learning something new. So you're not alone. I get it, but it's going to be okay. We will figure this out.
I love it. And that's a lovely segue. Like, I want to just repeat Amanda's question, which is like, what do you feel like you could learn, or what's in terms of the source of the overwhelm? And we're not promising to totally heal everyone's overwhelm.
No.
But is there something that we could maybe answer here that might have you feeling even more empowered? We'll of course follow up with the recording and all the resources that we've mentioned. And let's just pause for half a minute so you can think of questions. And with the questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and pick the ones that are, I imagine, that are applicable to more folks, or I'm going to try
Mhm.
to draw ones out that are like folks are like, oh yeah, I could see how that kind of relates to me. And then for
Yeah.
those who have really specific ones, I'm going to save those at the end. Hopefully we can get to those.
Mhm.
But some of them are so niche that, but let's try. So Mohammed's asking is, to what extent is this information applicable to international students? And I'm going to add that to like, what resources could we share for international students?
Well, Ethan, I think you shared a great one earlier. Do you want to go ahead and pull yours up while I talk about the one I had?
Great.
Yeah. So in terms of affordability for international students, my friends Jenny and Jeff, who are fantastic, they have a resource through Big J Consulting that delineates the average non-need aid for international students across hundreds of institutions. Let me see, while you're pulling yours up, Ethan, I'll see if I can put that link in the chat real quick.
Great, great. Yeah, so here's a resource that a really awesome student. So an awesome student named Vikas contacted me last year, and he was like, "Hey, I'm applying, international. I'm applying from India." And he pulled together a whole bunch of stuff. Let me just show this to you really quick. So he pulled together a whole bunch of data, and in this guide, he basically, in working with a developer that I connected him with, he put together a tool that allows you as an international student to learn, for example, if we're talking about, I'll just go University of Rochester, what type of financial aid do they offer? So is it need-based, merit-based, both? What percentage of students, of undergraduates, receive financial aid? What number of international undergraduates are awarded financial aid? What was the total amount that they gave out? And then what was the estimated cost of attendance after the award? So this is a really, really lovely and comprehensive guide. And inside this thing that I just put in the chat, it walks you through, again, some of the terminology that Amanda shared just now, but it's how to use this. And there's also a guide, a step-by-step financial aid guide for international students. So if you're brand new to this and you're an international student who needs money for college, check out that financial aid guide. And then at the risk of overwhelming you, watch this. So when I go college application hub, college essay guy, this is like our favorite. Actually, sorry, that didn't pop up because I deleted my cache here. When you go to free resources on college admissions, you'll see this college application hub, which has a ton of resources that that are all free. If you click, are you an international student? Then you'll see, and I know hub is kind of a weird word, but hub means like the central holding place, the central place where all the information is processing. And you'll see things like 10 must-know application requirements before applying to college in the US. You'll see, how to research schools that are outside the US. Lots of things. You can see that, and Kristen, an amazing counselor, put this together. You'll see her all across these guides. But I'll put this hub and all the resources into the chat as well. Amanda, back to you.
Yeah, I've got the ability to share my screen right quick and share this
Great.
source I had pulled up. There we go. So I put it in the chat already. So you should be able to get right to it. So this is the correct website. And if you scroll down right here, this is domestic undergraduate need-based and merit-based aid. And then there's an international version right here. So they update it usually every August, so we're gearing up for another update. But this is really great because I'm going to highlight these two columns over here. So it lists an institution, and then it says average merit aid award to non-need undergraduates, and then the percent of non-need undergraduates receiving merit aid. So 98% of non-need students at Agnes Scott are getting on average $30,000 off their 60. So that's pretty fantastic. So you can pull up the sheet. If you pull up the sheet, you can organize it, search it. You can also pull up a PDF if you prefer.
I did a podcast with Jenny a while back, and I'll put it in the chat as well, that talks about how to use that thing that you're looking at in your college search. And I'll put that in the chat as well. All right. Next question. Zoom down. So, no, please.
Oh, go ahead. Just a really quick one from Olivia. Will there be an option to manually enter tax information? They haven't released the online form, but they are allowing paper. So I assume, yeah, like they have a paper version that, yeah. So I think there will be an option, but we will see. there's a lot we don't know. So thanks for the question.
Yeah.
All right.
Does a scholarship recipient have to report a scholarship to the college?
Yeah, you're supposed to. So let's say I'll give my example here. So I said I grew up in Tennessee. So Dolly Parton, real person, real place, great. She gives a $15,000 scholarship to the a recipient for each of the 4 high schools in the county, and got it. It was great, fantastic. Took it to the college, and they said, "Great, we're going to reduce your aid and just stick that money in its place." And I was like, "Well, I don't need that." So yeah, so you are supposed to report the scholarship dollars you're bringing in from private and outside to the college. And usually the phrasing for this is stacking. You can ask a financial aid office if they stack scholarships. So if they don't take away their own aid until all of unmet need and then all of your loans are taken care of. And then once that point is hit, then they would start reducing. So, but yes, you're supposed to tell them there's an outside scholarship form you fill out in summer after you graduate. That'd be a good problem to have, though. That'd be so great. Like, I have so much money. Don't have to take out loans.
This is an interesting one. Will colleges hold their acceptance letters based on the aid changes? This is like a crystal ball moment. You have to kind of guess at this.
That's interesting. I hadn't considered this. If a college is need blind, they absolutely should not be doing that, because it should have absolutely nothing to do with whether or not the student's accepted.
No.
I suppose if a school were need aware, that might be the case, where they're like, okay, we want to accept all these people, but we need to know who we can afford. I could see that being a thing. So I can't speak to them definitely doing it, but it might be, that might be the delineating line if the school is need blind or not.
Yeah. Do you have an, Andrea asks, do you have an SAI online calculator that you recommend?
Online calculator, not yet for the SII. There's so many EFC ones that were great, but obviously that's not helpful anymore. But there's a guide out for, like, I actually sat down and did this for a couple hours the other day, where I manually calculated my family's SAI to like walk through the process. I don't recommend that unless you just want to do it. I'm sure calculators will be coming out. I can't say when. I don't have the technological prowess to build one, otherwise I probably would. But you can, I think the selling point is rather than the SAI is the automatic Pell. I think that's something that we can latch onto as counselors and say, here's what we have, and the rest will be coming. So if you find one, please let me know. I want to see them when they come out.
Same. I'll do the same. How does job loss factor in, if at all? For example, I haven't been working at all in 2023, but I did in 2022. Is there a way to communicate that in the FAFSA or other means?
Great question. Okay, so love this question. So how FAFSA works is they use prior years. So let me start by saying that. So what year your student graduates high school, so 2024, subtract 2, that's the tax year you would use for their first FAFSA. So when you fill out the FAFSA, they're only going to ask about 2022 tax information, income information. They'll ask about your assets as of today, but income for that year. If you have had a dramatic shift, colleges know that happens. Then you would go through the appeals process. There's not an explicit place on the FAFSA to check a box saying, this has been the case, but that's where you follow up with the institution. You file the FAFSA and then you immediately reach out and say, hey, here's what FAFSA says. Here's the reality. I will say for job loss, if you've been jobless for like 3 weeks, the colleges say, get back to us later. But if you've been jobless for, 4-6 months or longer, that's the point at which they would want to talk and like figure out what the next steps are, because they do take that into account and they do understand that happens. That was one of the things they anticipated the last time they did a big FAFSA change, when they went to prior year. They knew the number of people appealing was going to go up. So totally understandable. Work with the college. Professional judgment is your friend.
I want to take 90 seconds to do a quick PSA for the courses that are coming up. Let me just jump in, and we've got
Can I share my slide?
Oh yeah, please do share your slide. Go.
Okay. Yeah. Ooh, where'd it go? Here we go.
And then we'll do more questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a really brief snapshot that is not currently available on the internet. So of what we're going to be talking about. So this is the How to Pay for College mini course sneak peek.
Ooh, fancy.
I know, right? And I try to make it, really snappy here. So 9 things students who win scholarships do differently. 9 steps to take before starting the FAFSA, make completing it much less stressful. you all can read, but yes. So lots more things for us to talk about than I could currently fit into this discussion. But that's what
Great.
we're gonna be
12
talking about.
favorite tools for determining whether or not a specific college is likely to be a financial fit. 7 ways students can reduce their college costs. I mean, I've already seen this stuff, but I'm like, I love I'm here for the snappy bullet points. Let me do a couple of more snappy bullet points. This is, by the way, a pay what you can course. In case folks haven't taken a course with us before. But we're talking money. How do you find and figure out scholarships? Figure out, like Amanda said, which colleges are most likely to be affordable to you. And the course is coming up August 5th and 12th. And we're doing it at 10 a.m. Pacific. Hopefully that's kind of like still in, time when folks are, yes, folks may be on summer break, but, and then it's definitely, if you can't join live, we're definitely, sending out the recordings and all that for folks. So what else? I think that's, let's talk about the counselor one for a second. We also have a counselor one for counselors and educators. And we've got 2 different cohorts this year. So we've got a cohort that's for high school-based counselors and for independent educational consultants. Amanda, will you say just a little bit more about why we made the choice, really you made the choice to split the cohorts?
Yes, so I have worked as both. I worked for the College Advising Corps at a public high school with a senior caseload of 400. So I've done that. And then I've also worked as an independent educational consultant. And I know the needs are different. So even though we're talking about financial aid, and even though financial aid is just one of the many hats you wear, or expertise, areas you need to have, they're different in terms of their focus. So for my school-based counselors, it's all about scale. It's all about how do I frame things quickly, efficiently, but correctly and accessibly for students? How do I make things engaging for students that they want to talk about financial aid? They want to come to me. They know I'm a resource. So how do I streamline it? How do I take what would normally take me 5 hours and make it into 2? Or how do I take a wandering conversation and make it a couple bullet points to get us started? And then independent educational consultants, we do a lot more one-on-one advising. We can go a lot deeper with students and like investigating financial fit for individual institutions and really curating that list. We're going to get a lot more perhaps like really penetrating questions about the FAFSA. And how can we, collaborate? This is for both of them. Like, how can we collaborate with our peers and like get the best of the resources so we all walk into next school year as ready as we can be?
Totally. So we'd love to have you. And high school counselors, there's the pay what you can spots as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's do this. Jumping back in. Oh, this is kind of 2 people ask kind of a similar question, but Renata asked, when applying for college, there's commonly a question asking if financial aid is necessary to attend. Does answering yes hurt your chances? And related question, Alexandra asks, what's the connection between early decision action and financial aid awards?
Okay, these are really loaded questions, y'all.
Yep.
Okay, I'm gonna start with the first one. So when applying college, is financial aid necessary to attend? So here's the advice I would give. Regardless of what it does to your chances of admission, if you need aid to attend that college, you need to tell them, because if you say, I do not need aid, and then you are accepted, and then all of a sudden come back and say, JK, I need aid, there may not be aid for you. So that's one. So if you need it, just click this. Now, I will say colleges will tell you if they are need blind. I know that some of my admissions friends folks talk about it as need squint, but need blind of, they're committed institutionally to a student's ability to pay is not impacting their admissions decision. Now, there's a caveat to that. With wait lists, it can matter and here's why. Because at that point, all the institutional aid has been allotted. And so when you get to the wait list, you need to know that it's a family that, it wouldn't be an admit deny situation where, yes, you're in, that'll be $50,000, even though you can afford to. Like, that's not fair to put the family in that situation. So that's how I'd frame it. So could it hurt your chance of admission? Is it possible? I'm not going to say it's not possible, but I'm going to say it's much better to be honest about these things.
I'm just going to maybe we'll do like a little rapid fire round where we'll do a couple in a row. So and these are more specific ones, but is COVID EIDL loan taken into consideration? Do you know about that?
I don't know about that. I'm writing it down.
This is what Amanda does, and then we'll go research this. What if you're supporting aging parents? Is there a way to place this into the process?
Ooh, yes. So by support, there's a clear definition here. So the answer is yes, if they live with you and you provide more than 50%. Now that's how it's described in the FAFSA. So if you have someone who's with you, and it's also, but with it being more aligned to the taxes now, if they're not on your tax return, I'm not sure how that works out, but traditionally, yes, like if there is if there's a person in your house that you are supporting and they live with you, then they count as part of your household for FAFSA purposes. So I hope that answers your question. I can't guarantee what that will look like with the whole merging of taxes and FAFSA. And if it's still that way and they just flag you for clarification through verification or what, but it is considered. And for CSS, it's always been considered.
Can you talk about no loan colleges and universities? What does that really mean? Does that only apply to low income families?
Excellent question. So, oh man. Okay, so I went to one of these. So Davidson College was the very first college after Princeton to institute this policy. And then the 2008 financial crisis hit, but they stuck to it. So I was a beneficiary of this. So I graduated without loans because of it. I was also Pell eligible, so I would have qualified as one of those low income kids. So what I would encourage you to do is you can look up, that might be a little too data specific. In the internet, it is possible to look up like how much in loans different institutions students are graduating with. So even at a no loans college, are there people graduating with loans? Yes. And here's why. Because the CSS profile / FAFSA / the financial aid office decided that you could pay this much, but your stepfather decided to buy a yacht the year before and like you don't have the money for college, then you take out a loan. Like it could be that situation where the college expects you to be able to pay this and you can't, and you've got a loan to cover that gap. So that can happen, but they do meet 100% of demonstrated need. That's how they phrase it. So whatever your demonstrated need is through those forms, they meet 100% of that without loans. If you can't meet that other bit, then that's where the loans might come in. And that's only like a couple dozen schools at most. Like there's not a lot of those 100% need no loans colleges.
I'm putting a link real quick in for our live session survey, which is just like getting to know y'all better so that we can figure out how to provide more and better resources. So I'll put that in. And then I mentioned earlier that I'm going to randomly select somebody in about 5 minutes to give away a free book. So thanks for taking a look at that. Scooting down, a couple folks have asked about 529s. Does the FAFSA factor in 529 savings plans? And to what extent are people quote unquote penalized for having savings?
Oh man, you struck a gold mine with this question. I was hoping somebody would ask it. Okay, so 529s. So I'm going to talk about how it used to work, and then I'm going to talk about how it works now, which is actually a little more exciting. So in the past, how it works is
real quick, sorry. And just in case somebody doesn't know what a 529 is, will you?
Oh yeah. Sorry. Thank you.
Know what that is?
Yes, thank you. Ethan's my hey, you're getting too technical here. Angel on the shoulder. Thank you. 529 is a college savings plan where your interest can grow tax-free, and then you can withdraw it with no penalty as long as you're paying for school and newly private school up to a certain amount. Just like K-12 private school, you can use it for that now too. So a parent can set up a 529 plan, like I have done for my two, and put money in it, and then it grows. Okay, everybody good? Okay, and you don't have to get one from your state. So you can be in North Carolina and get a Minnesota one if you wanted to. But different states have theirs. Okay, so 529 plan. So the way it used to work is, I'm going to call it, family of 4. Parents have 2 529 plans, one for student A who's about to go to college and one for their younger sibling. Both those 529 plans would be on the FAFSA as parent assets, not student assets. Even though they're for the student, the parent could theoretically say, I disown you, you colored your hair purple, I don't know, and I disown you, so you're not a beneficiary anymore. So it's a parent asset, not a student asset, which is good because parent assets are assessed at a lower rate than student assets. So that's one. What is happening now is they are still counting them, but there's a couple of differences. One that I've known about for a while and one that I just found out. So the one I just found out is, and this is in the law, it's not even on the FAFSA, I had to dig pretty deep. So now apparently the law is that 529s for siblings aren't counted. So in that family of 4 where student A is going to college and student B is staying behind, and they've got a 529 for each of them, the sibling one doesn't count on the one who's going to college as FAFSA. That doesn't exist. That's the way it's supposed to work. And then here's the big loophole. The big loophole is, in the past, if your grandparents had a 529 for you, or Uncle Steve had a 529 for you, and gave you money for college out of that 529, eventually, like your junior, it's starting to count as untaxed income that you then have to have factored into your student aid index, your EFC, whatever it is. Like, and then that increases what you're able to pay, which decreases the age you get from the college. You guys following me? So like you get penalized, delayed for taking that money. Now that question has evaporated. There is no more untaxed income question. So if you've got a wealthy Aunt Ida who has a 529 for you, you have lucked out, my friend, because none of that money is going to appear. So if you have a grandparent 29, that doesn't show up. But if it's parent owned, or I suppose if students set up their own, that would count as their asset. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. A couple of folks are asking specifically about parents in graduate school. Do parents end up counting as students when they're taking things into account? Do you know?
Okay, so on the FAFSA, it has asked that question, how many are in college? And the answer is, when parents fill out their FAFSA form for their aid, they would count them and their students. But for the student form for undergraduate, they do not count the parent. It is just the student that is counted. I hope that answers your question.
Madeline's asking a follow-up. Can you transfer a 529 into a grandparent's name?
Oh, I love it. You're thinking so great. I'm not going to advise you to do that because I am not a certified public accountant. I am not a CPA. I am not a tax advisor, and I do not know the tax implications of that. So could you? I'm sure you might be able to, but I am offering no financial advice on that front.
Good, safe answer. All right, let's give away a book, and let's go. Actually, Diana, I'm going to tag you and see if you would mind. Will you pick the 7th most recent person to fill out the form? That would be awesome, and throw it into the chat, and we'll see who won the book. And we'll follow up with you via email to. We need to make sure we have that person's email, but to give you the book. So we'll see who won. This is the part the students seem to love the most. They're like, "Give me that free book." And we'll do a couple more questions. And let's see. Are you seeing any? Actually, Amanda, I'm gonna let you scan.
Yeah, I'm just kind of scrolling, and Olivia, yours keep coming up. I'm sorry. I read that there's some prediction that schools will use CSS in addition, maybe favored this year. Yeah, I had that, maybe not prediction, but like conjecture that CSS profile might be starting to be used by more schools because the FAFSA will capture less of the family's financial picture. So could I see more schools using a CSS profile? Yes. Are they all going to jump ship and do it this year? I don't know. What we might see also is a rise in institutional specific forms, which have been pretty rare up to this point. But think of them like, if you're familiar with college applications, how there's the one common app essay, and then there's those supplemental essays. The FAFSA might be that one main essay, and then individual colleges might follow up and say, no, we need this extra information to alter it and have our own institutional methodology. So I can see a world where that happens. FAFSA look into your state of residence. Yes. Cost of living is considered. Yes, they do look at which state you live in. Great question. Because $50,000 in New York City is different than $50,000 in Jackson, Mississippi. Absolutely. They also take into account age of the parent, how close they are to retirement age, and they factor that in to asset protection and a couple other things. Honestly, asset protection is kind of petered out. It was a lot bigger, but they really cut it down with this new form. Let's see. Yeah. What is a CSS profile? I mean, it says, imagine a FAFSA on steroids. So it takes me about 12 to 15 minutes to fill out the old FAFSA because I got it. I had it memorized. It was great. CSS profile takes me about 4 hours. And I'm working fast, and it takes longer now because it used to be you had a whole set of questions, and now they just put up one question at a time, and it's really annoying. I hope they change that for this year. So CSS profile, they ask about medical debt, the value of your home, They ask about if your kids are in private school. They ask all sorts of things that they don't ask on the FAFSA. So it just takes a lot longer. Also, importantly, CSS profile for separated parents, that scenario with the lunch lady and the dentist, they ask for both. So, and all the step parents, they want all the info. They do have your zip on their follow-up question. They have all that information.
By the way, Jenny McDonnell, you won the book. Congrats. Diana put in the chat, but I wanted to call it out.
Oh, CSS stands for College Scholarship Service, but nobody uses that. But that's what it stands for because it's a misnomer.
Let's see. So Allison asks, are you saying that some schools that are test optional may only award merit aid or scholarships to students who submit test scores?
So if they're doing it through like an automatic process and they're just giving merit aid through a holistic review, probably not. But I'm going to highlight University of Tennessee at Knoxville. They do have a test optional like rung of their scholarships, but for the bigger scholarships, they have a test score attached to them. Or University of Wyoming, that's a great one. They have a grid. What's your GPA? What's your test score? Boom. Or Alabama, like there are schools for which your financial aid or your scholarship, your merit scholarship can be pegged to a test score. There are fewer of them, but yes, there are schools that exist that that's the case, but they should clearly state that if that's the case.
Lovely. Well, let's call it there. And I want to say thanks, Amanda, for being here and always being the awesomest. And, you know, we hope to see some of y'all on this course. Again, it's pay what you can. We don't want there to be a big financial barrier to joining because that would be weird. But hopefully it's going to be really practical and you'll have all the things figured out. And it's only a couple sessions long. So hope to see some of you there. And we'll see you on the next webinar coming soon. Thanks again, Amanda. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Bye, y'all. See you.